Why are you in town? What made you say we're going to leave Texas and go to DC and make sure that people understand what is happening with our voting rights for our constituents?
We had no choice but to act. The Republicans put forth a very regressive bill that was killing voting freedom. And it became clear that they would not make the bill any better because we had 24 hours of testimony largely against the bill that they were offering, and they would not take any Democratic amendments. So the House leadership and the caucus, the Black caucus and the Hispanic caucus and the House Democratic caucus called us and said, we've got to go, and we answered that call.
I really want people to know what's in this bill because this impacts not only Texas, it impacts every state in the United States that has a Republican governor. They have the same agenda, they have the same bill, they have the same mean items in every bill. And so let me just kind of go down where it makes it real easy for people to vote. We have had a complete turnaround. For example, if you want to take your grandmother to the poll, you cannot drive her and her friends to the poll. You have to take one person to the poll, and everybody in the car has to be related to you. And then you have to sign an affidavit that you brought them to the poll, or you will be charged with a misdemeanor or a felony because you may be caught for I guess you say bringing people into the poll, bringing a load of people. You cannot do the Sunday souls to the polls where you pick up a busload of people and bring them in. You can't do that anymore. For those of us who are used to going to the poll, this past poll, I drove through in a brick and mortar in a tent. This year, you have to have it vote in a brick and mortar facility. You cannot vote in drive-through anymore. That makes it very difficult for mothers who have children, who have to leave maybe 2 or 3 children at home while you go vote, which is not safe. You cannot drive other people through the poll like I did. I drove a worker at my house to the poll. She had just had hernia surgery. You can't do that anymore. So that makes it really difficult for people to go in and vote. Also, for those persons who are handicapped, they are going to have a difficult time to getting to the polls too. So there are so many items, and that's just a tip of the iceberg. There are at least 20 or 40 other items in the bill, which makes it really difficult, particularly for minorities to go out and vote. And so that's why we're here, and we are asking every state that has this same bill join in with us. So it's just not a Texas problem. It's not a Houston problem. It is a United States problem.
Why is there such opposition to making it easier to vote? I mean, you work side by side with the Republicans in the House. You've seen the arguments about voter integrity and questioning whether or not, it's okay to have all these people inside of the car. Why this pushback? Is this new to you all, or is this regular what you're used to when it comes to your state GOP?
We had all these wonderful things to be initiated in the Houston Harris County area, and so the voting turnout was so good, and so they said, okay, we will stop that. You will not get this high voter turnout anymore. So we're going to rig some rules up that will slow people down. Keep in mind that there's a felony. You might be charged a felony and or a misdemeanor for assisting someone. One other thing is that if you're going to vote by mail, you have to put your social security number on the outside and your signature on the outside of the envelope. You cannot assist anybody. If you are going to vote by mail, you also must explain what your handicapping condition is. Why do you need to vote by mail? Your doctor cannot even give that under the HIPAA law. So now we have poll watchers who are going to come and stand over you and watch you and intimidate you while you're at the poll. So we can't have that. That's why we're making too much progress. We had too high a voter turnout. And so we are traditionally not known for going back to the polls, doing the off election. We go to the polls during the presidential election. And so they picked this time to initiate all of these horrible ideas for voting. So yeah, that's why we got these new rules. And I've still just had a tip of the iceberg on the rules, some of the rules.
Are any of you all concerned about, returning to Texas and trying to work across the aisle? Like Governor Greg Abbott was on the Texas Standard on the radio, that show, and he was saying that because of the quorum bust, that Republicans are going to be in no mood for additional compromise. Like, does that make any of you all concerned?
I don't think we're going to have a problem working across the aisle. One thing I'll say is we do in Texas work in a bipartisan fashion, and they are saying they want us to come back home. But I'll say I was reluctant to take some of their calls and to hear them out. But I believe they see that we are making a difference. They see that we have taken the Band-Aid off, and it hurts. It hurts, sometimes when you rip that Band-Aid off and things have become unveiled. And now, not only do we know, everybody at home knows, and everybody across the nation and internationally know that these are the types of restrictions that are trying to be put in place. And as Dr. Allen said, it has been an ongoing problem. The reason they are doing this is because they thought that straight ticket voting would be a problem, taking that away from us. But the way people came out in the 2020 election cycle, it proved to be wrong, and they didn't believe that it would hurt them. So that is why. That is why they are doing this, because as Dr. Allen said, people came out, and especially with all that we did suffer during the pandemic, people were going to find, and people were dying. We know 700,000 people gone. Some of those loved ones were near and dear to our hearts, and people were going to find a way by any means necessary to vote. They were going to do it by absentee ballot. I had a constituent say she was glad that her husband could drop off her absentee ballot with her working from 7 to 7 on the front lines as a frontline worker. And the bill, I think Dr. Allen mentioned some of the provisions, but there are so many. The other thing is, in the House, the bill changes over and over and over again, and sometimes it changes overnight. So, I'm glad to know that they've worked out that souls to the polls issue and the time change and the time difference. Because that, I had someone tell me that because I represent out of Dallas County, I shouldn't be talking about the problem with souls to the polls because we open at 1 to 6. So our polling time is 1 to 6. But this is a statewide issue and an issue that's nationwide. So That is why we're talking about it. It's not just for Dallas County. Tarrant County is 11 to 4, but it would affect that because, we do know that in our churches, we dedicate that time. Some people wait until their Sunday souls to the polls to go and vote with their church family.
So is this now a good time to start talking about voter reform? Moving forward, we saw this in 2018 with a lot of mobilization for voters in Georgia. And now we're hearing, how through 2020 and the pandemic, these modifications were made to make it easier for people to vote and safer for people to vote. Like you mentioned, how many people were lost to this pandemic. Is now the time to push voter reform in the different ways in which people can possibly cast their ballot?
It's always a time to look at how to enfranchise people to vote. And that's why we left, because this was such a crackdown on stopping people from voting and intimidating people at the polls. So now we're in a defensive posture. But if you're asking what else could we be talking about in terms of playing on offense, we can always do that. But the main offense is a good defense. And the restrictions, Nicki, that they put out there emboldening poll watchers to come and intimidate our senior citizens at the polls, untrained poll watchers, people that we imagine or predict will be affiliated with the Proud Boys and walking around intimidating our voters. And you'd have to, before you could kick them out, you'd have to see them make intimidation behavior. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the latitude that they have and the criminal penalties that would go into effect for anyone trying to assist the voter in a manner that is new, that they just have done last election, like with your senior or your mother or your related person. The new rules are just incredible and onerous.
And I'd like to add to that, Nikki, if I might, we've been talking about these poll watchers and that being a problem, and it certainly is, but I'd like to add to the discussion that some of that voter intimidation happens outside the polls as well. And it's, for me, in my district, I had candidates going beyond the 100-foot marker, going right up to the voter, and people on their team. The Proud Boys certainly were in our area. And I had people telling me that I better get away from the polls. I was the elected official and incumbent, but Rhetta, and calling me, Rhetta, get out of here, and calling me a racist. So this thing has layers, and I don't think it just has to do with the poll watcher right inside. It happens outside the polling location as well.
Moving forward, like, is this the end? A trip to DC, lobby, and then go back to business as usual? What's next? You all represent a very mobilized contingent of the Texas State House Representatives. So
no, we are here for the long haul. This will not end. We are here to, when things change, then we will change. But we are here for the long haul. We've left our families. I left my family, my children, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren. I have 3 missing events. My 7-year-old great granddaughter had a swim party birthday. I was not there, and I am there for everything. So no, the sacrifice is worth it, because the fight goes on, and we're here for the long haul. And if he calls another session, we call another walkout. If he calls 3 sessions, we call 3 walkouts. We are here till the deal goes down.